Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to be focusing on Chapter 18, which is about collective action, social movements, and social change. So let's first look at collective action. What is it good for? Collective action is action that takes place in groups and diverges from the social norms of the situation. One of the best things about sociology is that inherently, it gives us the insights to work towards collective action since we are more aware of the issues of the society we live in. Crowd collective action takes place when members of a group are face to face. Mass collective action is collective action in which close physical proximity is not necessary, such as letter writing or email campaigns. Either kind of collective action draws attention to a cause and works to bring about social change. When we look at theories of collective action, let's first focus on convergence theory. According to convergence theory, collective action happens when people with similar ideas and tendencies gather in the same place. This theory does not explain the inconsistency of group action, why collective action sometimes happens under such circumstances and other times does not. According to contagion theory, collective action arises because of people's tendencies to conform to the behavior of others. This theory downplays individual agency and doesn't explain the inconsistency of group action. Emergent norm theory emphasizes the influence of leaders in promoting norms that members of a group then follow. This theory doesn't explain why particular people become leaders or why some action emerges norms within a group and others do not. Neil Smeltzer's value-added theory establishes 6 conditions that are required for a movement to coalesce and achieve a successful outcome. It should be noted that Smeltzer borrowed the term value-added from economics to explain how social movements increase in value in a series of progressive stages. So let's go over Smeltzer's 6 conditions in value-added theory. First, there must be a social strain present that existing power holders are unable or unwilling to alleviate. Second, people must be able to agree on a definition of the problem. Third, people must be free to act on their grievance. Fourth, there must be a spark that ignites the controversy. The 5th requirement is mobilization for action. People need to gather together in an organized fashion. The 6th requirement is the failure of social control by established power holders. There's also this notion of identity. In order to explain who we are as individuals, we tend to talk about different groups to which we belong. What makes each of us unique is a particular combination of groups with which we identify. Most people are members of several groups: the family they come from, the family they create, their friends, their coworkers, their peers, relationships, student groups, religious and spiritual groups, and so on. Part of our identity are static identity and dynamic identity. A static identity is an aspect of your identity, such as race, that does not change and that determines at least one group to which you belong. A dynamic identity is an aspect of your identity that is more fluid, such as working as a lifeguard for one summer, and that is determined by a group to which you belong. Both types of identity have connections to your group membership. For instance, people who share the same static identity, such as race, may find a commonality through shared experiences. People may create dynamic identities to conform to group norms. So now let's talk about social movements. A social movement is collective behavior that is purposeful, organized, and institutionalized, but not ritualized. Social movements are a type of group action. They're interested in creating, resisting, or undoing a social change. Social movements include groups of people or organizations that are focused on specific social issues. There are 4 types of social movements. Alternative social movements seek limited social change and tend to be focused on a narrow group of people. An example of an alternative social movement is the #NeverAgain movement, which is an American student-led political action committee for gun control that advocates for tighter regulations to prevent gun violence. The hashtag Never Again movement was founded on February 15th, 2018, the day after the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School shooting, which occurred on February 14th of 2018. Redemptive social movements are also focused on a narrow group of people, but they advocate for more radical change. An example of redemptive social movement is Covenant House, which is the largest privately funded agency in the Americas, providing shelter, food, immediate crisis care, and an array of other services to homeless and runaway youth. The goal with Covenant House is that if you provide the tools and resources needed for a child to have their basic needs met, then you will also be able to change their behaviors. Reformative social movements advocate for limited social change, but seek to effect that change across an entire society. An example of reformative social movements are the first, second, and third wave of the women's rights movements. Revolutionary social movements seek to make radical change across an entire society. An example of revolutionary social movements is the Weather Underground. This group of students from the University of Michigan Ann Arbor's campus began the Weather Underground in the late 1960s through 1977. They believed that Martin Luther King's peaceful protests were not effective and that violence was the answer to getting messages across. The Weathermen, as they were commonly known, wanted to create a revolutionary party to overthrow what they viewed as American imperialism and form a classless communist society. Remember, this is a time where people were up in arms about the United States' involvement in the Vietnam War. The Weathermen wanted to bomb local and federal buildings, including military bases and banks, and were added to the FBI's domestic terrorist group list in 1970. The Weathermen bombed the U.S. Capitol in 1971, the Pentagon in 1972, and the U.S. Department of State building in 1975, before going defunct as of 1977. So while they were able to get a message across, and they did use violence to do so, and they made an impact, maybe not in the way that they had wanted to, but they definitely raised their message through revolutionary measures, i.e. through violence. So how do social movements actually happen? Well, there's a couple of things that we can look at with this. The first is the classical model. The classical model of social movements proposes that social movements come about as a collective response to structural weaknesses in society that have a psychological effect on individuals. The resource mobilization theory recognizes the importance of political context and goals in the development of social movements, but also emphasizes that social movements are unlikely to emerge without the necessary resources. Without members, money, time, and motivation, a social movement won't be able to come together or stay together. Resources are as important to a social movement as they are to any organization that's trying to accomplish goals. The political process model of social movements proposes that a social movement's chances of developing are heavily influenced by three sets of conditions: expanding political opportunities, indigenous organizational strength, and certain shared cognitions among the movement's proponents. Think back about C. Wright Mills and the idea of context. The political process model suggests that context must be right for a successful movement, for a social movement, to be successful. Let's look at the stages of social movements. Social movements generally evolve through three stages. Emergence, the social problem being addressed is first identified. Coalescence, the social problem being addressed is the resources are mobilized and concrete action is taken to address the problem. And routinization or institutionalization. This is a formal structure that develops to promote the cause. Generally, the first two stages, that is emergence and coalescence, is where the individuals within the movement are very fired up. It becomes more difficult to maintain this charisma in the third stage of routinization or institutionalization, but this is necessary to maintain momentum in any movement. So now let's look at different social movement organizations. A social movement organization, or SMO, is a group developed to recruit new members and coordinate participation in a particular social movement. There are different types of social movement organizations. mass protest organizations advocate for social change through protest and demonstration. An example of a mass protest organization is Occupy Wall Street. Occupy Wall Street was a protest that started in 2011 in New York City and spread into other cities all over the United States. People protested against how poor and wealthy people have lived in different ways and are treated differently by other people, and also against the way corporations used their money. Another type of social movement organization are what are called grassroots organizations, which tend to work through existing political structures to promote social change. Grassroots organizations can be surprisingly powerful. They tend to start based on politics or in the interest of a community and then spread and grow. An example of a grassroots organization is a group called Grassroots Campaigns, which specializes in running face-to-face campaigns for political parties, candidates, and advocacy groups. Grassroots campaigns build membership bases and mobilize citizens for groups like the American Civil Liberties Union, or ACLU, the Democratic National Committee, or DNC, and Doctors Without Borders, or DWB. A professional movement organization is a type of SMO, or social movement organization, that has full-time leadership plus a large membership base that plays only a minor role in the organization. An example of a professional movement organization is the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, otherwise known as PETA. They have a strong leadership presence that oversees key aspects of their mission and gets paid full-time as full-time employees. Plus, PETA also has a large membership base that plays a minor role, usually in the form of protests and monthly donations to PETA's causes. We also have a participatory movement organization, which is the type of social movement organization that directly involved its rank and file members in decisions and activities to support the organization's causes. In short, a participatory movement organization is an organization that is based on public participation rather than contractual obligations. An example of a participatory movement organization is Wikipedia. Wikipedia uses the internet as a forum to gather and publicize information. They use the public's knowledge to add to their information base and highlight when inaccurate information is being used on any information page. Wikipedia has a limited number of staff, as most of their information gathering and compiling is based on the public information that you can find, plus the public at large's involvement. Something to note with social movement organizations is that Americans have traditionally had high participation levels in voluntary associations, and there are various theories about why this is the case. However, there's some evidence that volunteerism is on the decline in the United States, and one possible explanation is the influence of the internet. People can join groups online and donate money online to support causes without participating in any face-to-face meetings or activities. We already talked about the mass protest organizations and grassroots organizations just a few slides ago. When we think about social movements and social change, there's a couple of things that we need to think about. That not all social change is produced by social movements. Economic and political factors have a great deal to do with the evolution of society. Social changes are not valued in the same way by all people. What is of major importance to one group may barely register for another group, and they do not affect all people in the same way. Social change, when you think about it, is subjective. It's important to realize that no matter how altruistic a goal is, not everyone will be pleased with the outcome. For example, if you could somehow magically cure all illnesses, it would be great. But doctors, healthcare providers, pharmaceutical companies, and others might be unhappy because they would be out of work and losing revenue. Let's take a look at some societies and how they have evolved and how that has influenced how we look at collective action and social change. Premodernity is a social organization characterized by concentric circles of social affiliation, a low degree of division of labor, relatively underdeveloped technology, and traditional social norms. Figure 18.1 shows a pre-modern society with concentric and descriptive associations. Concentric means circular, with larger systems surrounding small systems. Ascriptive is a group in which status is based on a factor other than achievement. In this type of community, I am in the middle of my social world. Around me is my family. One circle beyond my family is my village. One circle beyond my village is my kingdom, perhaps. Each group is embedded or set within the groups all around it. All the people in my family live in my village. All the people in my village belong to my kingdom. Modernity is a social organization characterized by rationality, bureaucratization, and objectivity in which individuals are defined by overlapping group affiliations. Since the 1960s, many scholars have claimed that the modern period is drawing to a close. In figure 18.2, we see a modern society with overlapping voluntary associations. An individual is in the middle, surrounded by their family size, ethnicity, citizenship, status as a student, and religious affiliation. The transition from pre-modernity to modernity is linked to the expansion of scientific knowledge to the development of new technologies, as well as political structures with the notion of progress. So once we've gone from pre-modernity to modernity, and now from modernity to post-modernity, we can see that the value of self has shifted. So again, we have gone from me and everyone around me to me and here are aspects of me to aspects of just myself. So there really is no self. In postmodernity is in many ways a reaction against modernity. It's characterized by questioning of the notions of progress in history. It rejects the idea of a single narrative and embraces multiculturalism. Postmodernity also perceives the individual as having multiple conflicting identities. Postmodernity has been characterized by a questioning of linear progression. So in figure 18.3, we see the postmodern society characterized by paradoxical and decentered affiliations with no central aspect of self, but rather by aspects of areas that make a person who they are. This figure shows the person who is part of a biological family and a step family, French and US citizenship, Muslim and Jewish in faith, Hungarian ethnicity, and a student at Yale. This student has paradoxical aspects of being part of two types of family, biological and step, two citizenships, French and the United States, as well as two faiths, Muslim and Jewish. So what caused social change? Social change can be caused by factors other than social movements, such as technological innovation, new information and ideas, and conflict between social actors. In addition to providing a way for participants in social movements to connect, exchange information, and generally make their voices heard, the internet itself has become a forum for radical social protest activities, such as virtual sit-ins that jam web servers and online impersonation. The primary achievement of such protests is to draw media attention to a particular issue or cause. Ironically, perhaps the greatest sign that a social movement has been successful is when there's no longer a need for it because it's achieved its goal. I hope that this was helpful for you today in better understanding Chapter 18, all about collective action, social movements, and social change. In the comment section below, if you want 1 point added to your final grade, answer this extra credit question. What is one social movement you have been a part of or want to be part of, and why? What inspires you to be a part of social change? Again, you can answer that question in the comment section below by simply responding, and you'll get 1 point added to your final grade. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to reach out to me. Otherwise, I hope that you have a great day. Remember to be kind to yourself and to others, and to work smarter, not harder. Until next time, have a great one, y'all. Take care.